All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to session 3, rapid fire sessions. That last one was awesome with the students, man. That was great.
What great perspective.
Oh, and
really good.
You know, you could sense that they're a little hesitant to share what they were really thinking on some of the questions, because it's like, surrounded by professors here. I'm not sure if I would really want to give my my real opinion, but they did well. So
yeah.
Nice work, Ed, bringing those people in. They were great.
Mm-hmm.
No worries.
All right. So this last session is called Tools and Tech for TVET. Say that 5 times fast with a mouthful of IPA. I forgot this is live. I can't edit that out. This is not a podcast. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chad, this is your show. This is the time where Ed and I can just sit back and relax and do a little thing here. But maybe after your presentation, we'll chat a little bit about how Ed and I have integrated some stuff into the into our system. You ready?
Yeah, and just because Ed does a lot of the same stuff that I do. So I think you've got a little something at the end there too, right, Ed?
Yeah, I have some if we want to use it. Yeah.
we want to.
Oh, right.
The more perspective, the better. That's the way I feel about it.
Hey, I didn't get my background dressed up for nothing here, so we're all good.
Exactly.
On the first 2, you could see the scratched up walls and all the other stuff, and now I thought I'd spruce it up a little bit. All right, here we go. There it is.
All right, so today I'm going to be talking about online learning tools. I'm not going to get too much into like the pedagogy or philosophy behind them. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm just going to kind of show my process. And one thing that I always say when I start sharing my process with other instructors and educators is this is my process. It doesn't make it the right process. It just means that this is the way that I do it. So take what you want from it or dismiss the whole thing. It's just, I just like to share kind of the tips and tricks that I use and that they seem to be working for me and for my students. So with that in mind, when we're teaching online, and I think one thing we constantly have to remember is we were in a presentation yesterday with Clint Lalonde from BC Campus, and he mentioned that it's all about the connection, the human connection. I'm a tech junkie. I've loved computers my whole life, and I love coding and all that. Any kind of ed tech, as soon as I started teaching, I was all in. But as I've been teaching throughout this process, the one thing that I always keeps coming back to is these tools are a way to engage with students. So that has to be first and foremost. It has to be the students first. And how can these tools help our students? If the tool is cool and you like it, but it doesn't help your students, it's time to ditch it or reformat it or figure out how to use it. So that's my little soapbox rant, is just make sure that these tools are being used appropriately for your students, not just to make your lives easier. The whole thing that I have to remind myself is, what can I be doing to make my students' lives a little more easier through this time? So my online learning tools are the ones I'm going to talk to you today. And again, this is like a 30,000-foot view of them all. I'm going to talk about video conferencing software, how I use them, our learning management systems, how I use them, a chat, how I use the chat functions and then some formative assessment tools that I find very useful. And I'll talk a little bit about them as well. And again, I'll leave some time for questions at the end and for Ed as well. Now, I'm going to be using proprietary tools here. So when I talk about my video conferencing software, I'm talking about Zoom. When I'm talking about my LMS, I'm talking about Brightspace. When I talk about chat, I'm talking about Slack. When that in mind, all that the other tools that are out there do the same thing. So Zoom will be the same as Bongo, which is the same as Teams, which is the same as Google Meet. They all have the same function. So when I mention these different little things that I use within the tool itself, to my knowledge, most of them have the same functions out there. So again, any questions along the way, let me know. And that goes for you and Ed as well, Tim. So let's jump into it.
Let's go, baby.
So video conferencing software, like I said, it's Zoom. It's great for live lectures. And when we first started this remote learning online, a lot of us were doing that, and all the power to us. Like, we had a very short amount of time to learn how to teach in front of a computer screen. we've got some more time to reflect now. And one thing that we're learning, and that the studies are showing, and yes, it's all anecdotal studies, but our students cannot handle being in front of a screen for 3 hours at a time. When you think about it, and I've got a friend who's actually a clinical counselor, and I was talking to him about this, they call it Zoom fatigue. Because when our students are in a face-to-face class, they see the 5'8" version of me in front of them. When I am going on a screen, depending on whether they're looking at it through their phones or through like a regular screen, that becomes a lot smaller. Their focus has to focus in even more so on that. So for their brain, it's more difficult to stay engaged for longer periods of time. Now, we could get in a whole discussion about whether the 3-hour lecture or 3-hour class sessions were useful in the first place. That's a whole other topic for another time. But I acknowledge that, yes, a lot of us were doing live lectures, but I think that video conferencing allows us to do so much more. And it allows us to be so much more engaging, as opposed to just using this broadcast method where we just spew a bunch of information out at our students and they just take it in. I think there's a way that we can get them involved. So one of the things that I ask here is, how many users did Zoom have as of March 2020? And I know that this will come up in the chat maybe later, so I'm not going to ask because there's a bit of a delay and a lag. But Tim, you're not allowed to answer this. But Ed, do you know how many users Zoom had as of March 2020?
I don't know. 6 million. I don't know.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess. So 200 million.
Oh,
but,
okay.
but that was up from 10 million the previous December. So look at that amount of growth. Like, it just showed that we all forced ourselves online. And like I mentioned yesterday, that there was a huge infrastructure growth that went along with that. Lots of bugs and everything worked out with that, because we went from barely using online stuff like that to suddenly everybody having to. So I thought that was just an interesting stat. Now, this is the way I set up my day. And I bring this up because this is where I use my video conferencing the most. So my daily schedule is this. I actually log in online at 7:30 a.m. and I let my students know that I'm there. I post something. I'll talk about that in a second. And I tell them from 7:30 to 8, if they have any questions or they just want to chat or whatever, I'm there for them. So I log in at 7:30. Class begins at 8 a.m. I use Zoom, so they log in. Now, I don't require my students to turn their cameras on. For me, I don't feel that that's necessary. I do require them to be there, though. So I use a method that Ed will talk about too, and when he goes on to talk about this. It's a hybrid, where it's a hybrid synchronous, asynchronous. So I have my students log in and they have to be there. They know that they need to be online at 8 a.m. I only have 16 students, so it's really easy for me to take attendance. Those that don't end up online, they lose some of their, what I call a professionalism mark. That's another conversation for another day. In this session, it generally runs from 8 till 9:45. Sometimes it goes to 10. In this session, as I give a very broad lecture on what today's topics are going to be about. So that would be my Mondays. Okay, I go over what the week is going to be concerned with. I then go into a little bit of the topics that we're going to go into, and all the time I'm kind of interacting with the students. And then what I'll do is around 9:45 to 10, as I give them an assignment that they have to do from 10 till 12. So I've got a lot of different little group projects that I have them working on, different types of authentic assessments I'm really working on. Again, that would be another conversation for another time. Go ahead and reach out to me if you have questions about how I do those. But I make sure that they've got something to work on. I've designed my program so that they have a checklist, and I'll go over this, so that they can go through the checklist for the day, so they can follow along with what they need to know. So from 10 to 12 is I call independent study time. That doesn't mean that it's independent in the fact that they have no access to me. They have complete 100% access to me. Those that are struggling with things, topics, situations, equations, this is their time to actually have my attention one-on-one or for smaller group sessions. So what I'll do is I'll let them know that, okay, you guys, you've got some work to do. I'm releasing you, go make a ruckus. But if you're struggling with this, as always, I'm available in Slack, which I'll talk about in a second, or I can hop in on a personal Zoom session. We can walk through some stuff. In my 8 weeks using this method now, there's rarely a time where I'm not fully at my computer from 10 to 12 engaging with some student or another. This allows some students who can just go ahead and read through the information and just get it done to do that. But it also allows for some of the other students who struggle with it to really have some one-on-one time for instructors. Then I move into my noon session. So at noon, again, we all are expected to log on, whether they've completed all their checklists or not, whether they've done all the quizzes and basically are ready for the final, they need to be there. Because in the noon session, what I do is a lot of group work. And so I'll talk about that in a second. So what I'll do is I'll put them into groups, and then from about 12 to about 1:45-ish, maybe 2, we're checking in with each other. At 2 o'clock, I call them all back from the groups, again, using Zoom or any video conferencing software will do it. And then I have a recap of the day. I do a check-in with them, and then I let them go for the afternoon. So that's how I run my sessions. Now, how I use my Zoom in all of this is I start every session with a poll. The poll is always the first thing that they see when they log in. So 7:30, I have a question ready to go. This one says, how are you feeling this morning? Sometimes it'll ask, what's your favorite kind of pie? What's the best action movie? Who's your favorite rapper? There's always some sort of poll that's always up there. I did it because I thought it was funny and fun. So after about week 3, I was losing questions. I couldn't figure out any more questions to put up there. So I stopped doing it. And my students revolted. They actually really enjoy having, they were like, where's the poll? So they love engaging that way. And I found that they were joking around and talking. There's like getting engaged with each other, especially when you start mentioning movies and pop culture. They would start talking to each other in the chat. So I kept it, I brought it back. So I'm if anybody has any good links to questions that you can ask in polls, please share them with me because I'm rapidly running out of questions again and again. One thing I've really learned in my time here is to keep my sessions short and interactive. So as I mentioned before, I stay away from me lecturing for 3 hours because I'm going to lose them at any point anyways. What I'll do is I'll ask a question. I'll use a whiteboard in Zoom or anything. I can share a screen, and I have what's called a Wacom tablet. So I can just write on my screen. So I use different colors, just like I would on a whiteboard in class. And I'll throw up problems or throw up like a situation or a scenario, and then have them work through it and then kind of answer back. So I do that. And that's why I only try to keep my sessions 2 hours at the most, because I find that I lose them otherwise. So I keep them short. I keep them interactive. It's a lot of work to get them there, but once the students kind of get into the rhythm of all this, you'll find that they really start to embrace the engagement. I use the feedback features. So Zoom will have these feedback features where you can answer yes, no, go slower, go faster. Under the more, you have a thumbs up, thumbs down, kind of a wave, and then there's a coffee cup there, which basically says I need a break. You'll always have the joker student who's constantly hitting the coffee cup at all the time. And I have like 3 or 4 of them in my class right now. So please pray for me. Just kidding. So what I'll do is I'll ask a question, and then I'll say, okay, when you're done the question, hit the yes button, please, so I know when we're done. So out of the 16, when I see about 11 or 12 people have hit yes, then I'll go into the explanation. And so I'll go through an explanation, and then I'll check in with them. I'll say, hey, if you understand what I'm saying, hit the thumbs up or hit the thumbs down if you don't. And that's where the jokers will always hit the coffee cup. But so then I'll see thumbs up. But then if I see a couple thumbs down, I know that I need to go back and I need to re-engage, or I need to explain it differently. So until I see basically no thumbs down, or if it's a thumbs down, I can see who's putting thumbs down. I never call them out. But then I'll say something like, okay, I know there's a couple of you still struggling with this. What I'm going to do is in the morning session from 10 to 12, I'm going to be online. So hop in there and we'll talk more about it. So this feature here has really brought my morning sessions and got them way more engaging, because they are all checking in. And I love to see that they like to use that thumbs up, thumbs down feature, whether or not they understand things. And it helps me as an instructor. I find it easier than face-to-face, because in face-to-face, we always have those students that are nodding and they're getting it, but then they're not getting it, right? Yeah, just like what Tim's doing right now. So this way, they feel safe enough that they can put it, because they know that not everybody's seeing all these things. So that's one of the features that I really enjoy. Breakout rooms. What I'll do with my breakout rooms is I will use the LMS that I use, and we use Brightspace, D2L, to assign groups. And then when I go into my group work in the afternoon, I can manually pick who goes into what room. I know a lot of people who use Zoom breakout rooms will just hit the automatic. So you'll set up, okay, I want 8 rooms, or I want 4 rooms with 16 students. It'll automatically assign 4 to it. You can go ahead and you can hit manual, and you can place students in certain rooms. So I make sure that when I do my group work, that for a week, they're always in the same group in the afternoon session. So they get used to each other. And these sessions are, to me, one of the most important parts of the day because they are learning from each other. And as good as an instructor as I might be, the best instructor in the room is always other students. Peer learning is huge. So I really try to facilitate that with my students. So I'll have them go into these breakout rooms. And again, if you think that that's great because then I can go watch a movie or take a nap on the couch, you'd be wrong, because what I need to do at that point is I let them into their groups for about 5 minutes. Then I start hopping in, because as an instructor in the breakout rooms, you can join the group. So I'll join the group and I'll ask if there's questions, and I'll get them to show me the work that they're working on, and I'll have them engage that way. And then I'll hop out into the next group. So it's like me putting them into pods. I used to do this face-to-face into groups, and then walking around the classroom, checking in on them. I do the same thing with Zooms. And what I'm finding is the students are actually, once they have these groups and they're getting used to each other, they're starting to have their own Zoom sessions after hours as study groups because they're getting used to it. So having them work with each other and facilitating that collaborative function within online, I think is really useful. I find that when they get into industry, they're going to have to learn how to do that anyways. So this is one of those hidden curriculum things where I'm forcing them to collaborate and to learn how to collaborate. Again, I get them to do self-assessments, peer assessments, and all that stuff as well. That would be another topic for another time as well, but it's working really, really well. Now, our learning management system, our learning man-and-mentee system, management, I forgot to change that. We use Brightspace D2L. All that what I'm going to talk about can be done through Moodle, can be done in Canvas. They've all got similar functions, right? It's just different types of tools. So what I do is I make sure that I have everything organized. I organize my modules into, so this one, for example, I've got series circuits. So I've got my worksheets in a folder. I've got audio in a folder. What I do is when I do give my students readings, I've noticed in trades education that a lot of students won't do the readings, or they can't do the readings, or they just struggle too hard with it. So I do a quick, and I learned this from Mike Wesh, I'll read through the chapter. And so I'll just kind of hop on my mic, do a read through, record it, and then throw it in there for them. And you'd be surprised at how many students appreciate that. So some students can read and have no problem reading, but they just take it in easier when they can actually hear it or have somebody read along with it. And then some don't read, so that they actually listen to it. And some can do it when they go for a run or go to the gym, they can take it with them. So yes, it's a bit more work on our end, but it's really helpful for the students. Videos, so I'll either create or curate, and I've talked about this before, is I go to YouTube, I'll find videos that are there that describe the topic, or I've made some, so I'll post my videos there. Oops. PDFs I'll put into there, so like any kind of articles or anything. Quizlets, that's what the formative features I'll talk about later on. And I've built some labs using some open source software. So I'll have them all organized in these folders. Now, when I was doing face-to-face, I found, and I used the same system, I found that students struggled trying to find things. And I was trying to figure out a way to kind of work around that until I saw a podcast or a video blog on it by an instructor who talked about how they use checklists. So I went to look to see if Brightspace had a checklist feature, and they do, as does Moodle, as does Canvas, as does everybody. So one thing I would caution you is don't use your LMS as a dump and run. Don't use it as a place to just toss all your resources and then leave it to your students to find it. Make it easily accessible for your students to get to. The way I do that is through checklists. So I have a daily checklist that I build. So this would be week 3 for DC fundamentals. They've got, on Monday, we did series circuits. Tuesdays, we hit parallel. Wednesday, we hit combinations. We reviewed combinations on Thursday, and then they have a unit final. So I tell my students that when they go into their LMS, the only thing they need to look at, don't go looking in folders, don't go looking for quizzes, don't go looking for assignments. They will all be in your checklist. This is what my checklist looks like. I break my checklist out into different sections, different lists. So I build it as a read, watch, do, and show. Read is all the reading, so all the PDFs or anything that I put in there. You'll see the Delmars I'll have there is like which chapter they need to read, and then you'll see that there's a blue thing that says listen to the audio here. Everything that is in those folders is hyperlinked on this check sheet. So all they have to do is click on the hyperlink and it takes them to the worksheet, it takes them to the reading, it takes them to the videos. It's a one-stop shop for our students. So they know now that when they go online to their D2L, they don't have to go looking, okay, I'm going to go to the worksheet folder now. and I'm going to go to this folder now, and I'm going to go to this folder now, because they don't. But when they go to the checklist, they just work their way down through the checklist. And then when they've completed it all, they check it off, which allows me as an instructor to see if they've got it done. So that's been really helpful to students. That's one of the things that they really appreciate the most, they've said, is having that one-stop shop and not having to go looking elsewhere. For me, the chat features and chat tools, one of the most powerful tools that an online teacher has available to them. The video conferencing is great. Your LMS is great, but engaging with your students is where it's at. It's always been about that for many of us, is we love to teach because we love those interactions with our students. We can still have that. And in fact, we can have interactions with our students that normally wouldn't interact with us. Our students are online all the time. They're chatting all the time. They're on WhatsApp, they're on Snapchat, they're in Discord. They have got some sort of chat function going all the time. So what we try to do is we try to mimic that for them. And what I do is I use Slack. So there's different tools out there. I know, Ed, I think you use Microsoft Teams. There's another one, open source one called Rocket Chat. There's Slack. And your LMSs, some of them will have that function available to them. But what I do is I make sure that I have one central place that they can go to communicate with me and with each other. Email is a great way to go if you're not familiar with this or you don't feel like you need to do this. Email is still a good touch point. Every student has an email address. You've got an email address. The notifications are there. I just find that they are used to these channels anyways, and there's a lot more that I can do with it than I find I can do with email. So what it does is it allows me to have an open line of communication with my students. I can constantly be talking with them. I can be checking in with them, and I don't have to call them out in class. I can have a direct message conversation with the student just by clicking on their name and saying, hey, I noticed you were a little late to the session. I just wanted to make sure everything's okay. Or just, I noticed that you hadn't done last night's quiz. I just want to make sure everything's okay. You can check in with them. So you can have that sort of function going on. I release a morning quiz to them every morning, and it's in Slack that it gets released to them. So I use something called Rocketbook. So I will write out a quiz in my handwriting as opposed to typing it out. I find that if I write it out, it forces them to write it out. And then if they write it out, it gets stuck in their head a little more. Again, that's more of a discussion again for another time. Then what I find is I can just get interactions going. Now, one thing I would caution, and I mentioned this in a session I did yesterday, is I'm really bad for setting my boundaries on this sort of thing because it's on my phone, because it's open on my computer all the time, and because I really enjoy talking to my students, I need to let them know that from 7:30 to 2:30, they have my full attention. If they ask me a question in Slack, they're going to get an answer back almost instantly, unless I'm in a discussion with somebody else. From 2:30 on to 6, you've got some of my attention. If I can answer it, I will. From 6 o'clock on, I'm not going to answer because it's family time. All right, but they all know I'm going to break that though. So they check in with me, but they don't get mad when I don't answer because I've already said no, I won't answer. But once in a while they'll ask a question, and it's always predicated with that. Hey, I know you're not online right now, but I wanted to get this question in before I forgot about it. And then I check it in the morning, right? So I tell them if they're going to text me late at night, I'm going to text them early in the morning. So I get up at 4 a.m. If they're okay with getting a 4 a.m. text from me to answer back, we're all good. So we all have a good laugh about that because then I get the 1 a.m. text from them. So it's an open line of communication with the students. It allows me to share files. So if I have a quick PDF I want to share with the entire class, I can just toss it into Slack, just drag and drop. It's just that easy into one of the channels. It drops it in there and the students have complete access to it. I can also go ahead and search. If I forget the name of a PDF or can't find the PDF, I can type in that I know it has magnetism in it, let's say. Slack will go through and it'll search it and search all the channels to find out anytime magnetism was mentioned, and then show me all that. So then I can say, okay, there's that PDF, and I can open it up and go from there. So it's very searchable. The students use it as a way to communicate with each other. Now, whether you realize it or not, and I'm sure most of us as instructors know this, our students in classes will have a back channel going. It's typically a WhatsApp group. And I've been invited to my class's WhatsApp group only to wish that I had never actually seen what was going on in there. So I let them have their own back channels, okay? You don't want no part of that.
Stay away from that swamp.
But from there, I also encourage them to within Slack, when we have group projects, use Slack as your group channel so that you can communicate with each other. So they do, and it's a good way to do it. Because some students don't use WhatsApp. Some will form WhatsApp and some will get into WhatsApp. Some don't have WhatsApp. Some don't have Snapchat. Some don't use Discord. So by making them kind of log into Slack, at least it's at one central point that they all have access to. So they can communicate with each other. So that's my chat stuff. I'm going to get into some of the formative tools. Now, I know I'm going fast and furious, but there'll be time for questions. And again, my Twitter handle is scrolling along the bottom there, thanks to Tim. So if you have any questions or want to talk more about some of what I've already gone through, please hit me up. You can get me at Twitter. And Tim, if you could place our email addresses in there too, that would be fantastic.
Yep. No problem.
So formative assessment tools, I love to use them. They're fun for our students. Actually, I'm going to skip ahead to one. There's one that is the most popular out there that most of us have used is Kahoot. And if I click on this, I'm going to see it opens up. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for a second, Tim, and I'm going to share another screen. So can you guys see that? There we go. So with Kahoot, it's just questions. It's basically an online quiz game that you can build really super easy, multiple choice. The students, they get more points the faster they answer. Completely moves to online very, very, very well. I've done Kahoots with my students online as well as face-to-face, and it works seamlessly. So it's a great way to go that way. I always try to throw some pop culture trivia type stuff in there just to kind of make it fun with them. So that's Kahoot. Going back to here. Flipgrid is one that I discovered last year, and it is a video feedback. So you give prompts and your students answer the prompts by video. Now you would think that might be difficult because not all students want to have their face on camera, and Flipgrid has done an amazing job of, you can have avatars up, you can actually have like the witness relocation blurry face kind of filter go on there. There's different ways for students to feel safe when they do these videos. What I love about Flipgrid is they also integrated a whiteboard into this. So what you can get your students to do is, I build a lot of instructional kind of quick tutorial videos. I can get my students to actually do the same thing on Flipgrid and add them in there. And I've got an example here of one of my students' work. Let me share this. And I'm gonna so he basically put this together to explain how parallel circuits work. So what I did at the end of the day is I drew this circuit up on the whiteboard. I said, okay, it's 400 volts. You need to kind of walk through. Here's all the information. I need you to walk through and explain me how to solve this information with what we've got. I'm going to play it. Can you guys hear the sound?
No.
No? Too bad, because there's this drum and bass soundtrack that he's built in there. And he's giving a shout out. He's got this smooth, silky voice like a radio announcer. And so he goes through and he explains, you'll notice that, I'll just play it without the sound right now. But he's used a carrot as a pointer that he kind of put in there. This is all done through Flipgrid and super easy to do. Mm-hmm. So right now he's explaining how all this stuff works. So again, unfortunately the sound's not there, but it's a great feature. Now, he put that out there. It's the first Flipgrid we did in our class. He upped the game. So the next one that I did, I used to do this weekly, is the next students had to do another one. All the resistors were pictures of my face. It got really disturbing. But the content was great, and they had a lot of fun with it, and they were creative, and they really engaged with it. So Flipgrid, there's so many different tools out there. You can go to what they call their Disco library, and you can go in there, and other instructors have put how they use Flipgrid. You can type in anything like series circuits. They'll have an instructor that's probably built something already for prompts and that sort of thing to use. So Flipgrid is well worth looking into. Kahoot, I've already gone over. H5P is, I don't even know where to begin with this. We should have, there's sessions upon sessions upon sessions of information we could go into this. It's basically an interactive tool that allows us to build quizzes, interactive video, interactive elements, hotspots, you name it, you can build it in H5P, and it's completely embeddable. So I'm going to show you an example that I have here. It's something I built. So this is a hotspot image I use. Again, I can completely embed this in my LMS. I just click on that, and then there's a description of what a field poll is. I can click on any of these. There's pictures. So you can add video into these as well. So you can really expand things out. So you can put this in your LMS, say, okay, here's a picture of how this all works, but you know, there's more description of an armature. So they can really dig deep. It allows them to open up more information. This is just what they call the hotspot. Now there's quiz sets you can build, true and false sets, arithmetic quizzes, interactive video. They just released the beta. I think actually it's out of beta now for a branching scenario. So basically you can build a choose your own adventure, which would be amazing to do for troubleshooting. I think it would be fantastic. So there's just a lot in there. So h5p.org, great tool. Edpuzzle is a way that you can build interactive video. Let me just go back to it. Open up Edpuzzle here. So in this one, this is an example of a video that I made, but you can go to any, they've got YouTube in there, so you can pick any YouTube video you want. You can put in the question here. Again, we'll go through the video, but along the way here, let me just go to here. You'll see that there's off to the right here, it says multiple choice, and then it stops. And then you can put in questions along the way with the videos, right? Why is this important? Because it is. That's what we tell our students, right? Because it'll be on the test. That's the most important part. So you can go on, and then they can answer it and continue. So what Edpuzzle does as well is you can enter all your students' names, and you can actually have them grades. Like you can give them grades to this, and then you can export it out and into your LMS. So if you use this as an actual graded item, Edpuzzle is fantastic. It's super fun to do. And our students, again, they love video. Like there's two things our students love: audio and video. And to be able to give them something like this, it gamifies it for them. So they'll engage a little more. Let's go back to what I have here. So those are some of the form. I don't want to take up too much time because I want Ed to talk about some of the amazing stuff he's done as well, and Tim. You notice I've got a fire hose here. That's a lot of information in half an hour's worth of time. And so there's a ton, and I've taken years to build up and do all this stuff. What I recommend is not to say, okay, there's no way I can do any of this. That's too much. You know, I feel overwhelmed. I get that. What I do recommend is dipping your toe in. Pick something that works and try it out. Try a Kahoot with your class and see how it goes. Try a Flipgrid. And that's one thing we had our morning session this morning with our students. One of the students, his advice to us as instructors was, hey guys, try stuff out. See if it works. Mm-hmm. You know, we're new to this as well as you are, and we get that. So same thing to us. Like, let's try these little different tools out and and see how it works. Again, you don't have to take your whole LMS and remaster it and remake it work right now, but you can make it work right for you now, right? You can little things that you can add and try out and build. And then next thing you know, as you're kind of doing this as you go, you start building up a nice little repertoire of things to go with. So it's very, very useful that way. Definitely stick your toe in, try it out, and reach out to people. Reach out to Ed, reach out to Tim, reach out to myself, and ask, how are you using these, or what would you recommend for this? Or if you want to have a deeper conversation about anything I've gone over, I love talking about this stuff, as I'm sure you can figure out by now. So let's keep the conversation going. So on that note, I just want to end with this. With the whole idea of bringing our students online and engaging them, more than ever, we need more, not fewer, ways to listen to the voices of students reflecting on education. We need to bring them into these conversations. Remember that with all of the tools we're using, I want to bring it right back to how I started. All of these tools are meant to engage our students and make our students' lives easier. So let's ask them, let's involve them, let's see what they're saying about this, because they have tools at their access that we've never heard of, or they might have ideas that we've never even thought of. So bring our students in to how they want to learn and ask them questions. Don't think that you're the expert. You are the expert at your subject matter, but maybe your students know how to better learn in their context than we do. So let's use them. And so I'll just leave it open to any questions right now, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions after as well. So any questions?
I got a bunch, but and I'll keep my eye on the chat too. So thanks for everybody who's engaging with that forum. That's awesome. You mentioned earlier on professionalism. A lot of people that we bump into talk about, how do I know if my students are logging in? How do I know I can keep control of them on the leash called attendance? What are you doing with that?
So I have what I call a professionalism mark, and often it used to be called like participation. A lot of instructors will use a participation mark. It's an easy 10% or whatever. So what I do is I say, okay, it's depending on the unit. I say, okay, it's 10% of your mark or 20% of your mark. And I'll tell them, you are starting out with 10 out of 10 as far as professionalism is concerned. If you are late for a session and you don't let me know, or if you just don't show up to a session, I'm taking 3 marks off. So that now becomes 7 out of 10. And I say the reason why I do that is if you're late to a job and you don't tell your boss or you don't show up, you might get to keep your job. But if you do that a second time, I take off another 3 marks. So what are you at now? You're at 4 out of 10. That's a fail as far as our marks are concerned. So, and then if they keep doing that, then it's 0 out of 10. Now I had one student who's brilliant, absolutely one of the smartest students I've ever had. He pushed me on this. He would be late all the time. So I took the mark off. He ended up with 0 out of 10 for professionalism. This student normally would get 100%. It was a unit that it was worth 20% for the professionalism. He got 80%. It rocked his world. He's not used to getting 80%. He got 100% on all the assessments. He got 100% on everything he handed in, on all the tests. Like, this guy should be an engineer. But he ended up getting 80% for the unit. Why? Because he wasn't professional. And guess who's at every session now? And guess who is there like before the session starts? This student. So that's how I'm handling, making sure that they're popping online. I only have up to a maximum of 32 students, so it's easy for me to tell if they're online or not. So, but they know, once they know that somebody got dinged on that, or they see it dinged on their own. This student was like shouting from the mountaintops to the class the next day. He's like, hey guys, if you think Chad's not serious about that professionalism mark, believe me, he is, because I lost a lot of marks for it. So they're all, also, guess what, all these people are signing in that were normally late because they all started getting dinged on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Good. The other thing is, how are your colleagues responding to your systemized approach to what you're doing?
The colleagues that I'm interacting with, they have their own methods, and a lot of them are very similar to these. So it seems to be working. Some still, I mean, when I mean colleagues, I mean instructors as a whole across Canada. Some still would prefer to just do a live lecture, and some not. So some are of the opinion that you should just point your webcam at the whiteboard and it's the same old. So that's on them. I'm not sure how well engaged the students are, but I'm not here to dismiss and say that they're wrong. I'm just saying that the way I work it is very, very different.
All right. And what's been the feedback from your students with the structured system that you have there with your check-in and your lecture and then the independent study time? How are they feeling? Like, I'm curious to know that.
At the beginning, some of them were not happy with it because some of them didn't like the fact that they were being forced to check in. And then I could easily push back on that one, saying, well, you'd be at face-to-face class, you'd be there anyway. So that's not a problem. Some of them struggled a little bit with having that independent study time. But then I let them, like, I have a lot of conversations. I think that's what makes this work is I talk to my students a lot about how I understand that some of you are not morning people and that some of you are going to do your best work in the evening, in the afternoon. So if you're taking that time in the morning to take your nap or to sleep in or do whatever you need to, you need to backload that to your more productive time. And so they're starting, and because I do a lot of group work with them as well, it holds them accountable to their group members. So they pick times that they have to engage with each other. So for the most part, now that I'm 8 weeks into this new method that I'm trying out, and so far it seems to be going really well. I do, every couple of weeks, I do a survey asking how they're finding this, and it's anonymous. And I'd say almost all of them are really enjoying having the autonomy and the freedom to do this. And they do like having check-ins, the morning check-in and the afternoon check-in now, because it helps them connect.
Right. One last question. So you've got a lot of stuff here, and I'm just going to take this piece away and get ready. So Ed, if you have something to share, then why don't you load it up and I'll get it ready to go here. But you shared a lot of stuff. You used a lot of stuff. What was two questions? First, what's been an absolute game changer for you? And two, what would you recommend somebody start dipping their toe into?
I'm going to answer that both with the checklist that I use. That has been a game changer with me, and I would start with that because I just our students they would always use the excuse, well, I can't find it, or if you want them to take a quiz, well, I couldn't find it under the quizzes. So to have it all laid out for them like that, and for me, it's a lot of work right now because I have to do it. I try to stay a week or two ahead. So but I know that my next session that I teach, it'll come a lot easier because I've already got the checklist built, and so then I can start tweaking it. Right. So a lot of work on the front end, but to make the back end easier.
Yeah, and that's kind of a follow-up question too, right? Somebody asked us yesterday, like, how long does it take you to do all this stuff? And one answer to that is, well, it takes me, like you said yesterday, it takes a day to do this and a day to do that. Another way that I would answer that question, in addition to what you said, is it takes your career to do this.
Well, that's just it.
But you have to start with the first step. And so just because you build it, and like you said, you get it to a point where you roll it from one course to the other, doesn't mean you stop, right? And so you learn a new tool, you learn a new little lever within the LMS that you can employ, right?
Yeah.
So all those things to go on. Thank you so much for that. Awesome, Ed. I'm going to add your thing here. Hey, I recognize that picture. Nice work. So
it's mine. It's an original.
It's I think the license was CC BY, so you're all good.
Right on.
Anyway, I want to introduce you, Ed, to the crowd. Ed, you are a plumbing professor in the beautiful province of Ontario, and we won't hold that against you. But it is an honor and a pleasure to share this space with you. You have inspired and challenged us in so many different ways. Thank you for that. And you are the impetus and the reason for this community of practice coming together for the last little while, especially today. This is our third session. And so, Ed, off to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I apologize ahead of time. I'm probably going to repeat some stuff, some similar stuff to Chad, just maybe in different forms. But on the screen there, I kind of used. I think of the tech as it's written on the screen there to create care. So I'm trying to use this to help care for my students and have empathy. So every little thing I use, or every little thing I learn how to use and I implement, it's with the thing in mind that I want to make the student be able to learn more, to understand more, just basically to grow more. And I do it for a variety of different ways. Some are low tech and some are high tech, depending how you want to look at it. So kind of just like Chad talked on earlier, I do a asynchronous, synchronous model or hybrid, whatever you want to call it. And I do have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in a minute. I load up a lot of stuff onto my learning management system, which is the D2L. But I do have a smaller focus on an online session with my students. Again, kind of similar to Chad, I keep it compressed. I try to focus on points that are that I know are usually hot button topics or where the usual problems kind of lie, and trying to focus on them. And then try to interact with them and try to ask them questions, because hopefully, not all the students, but hopefully they kind of start the learning process online. And then when we come to our discussion class, they have some of these ideas rolling around their head, and I can, kind of just pry in and see how they understand it. And currently I had just used Microsoft Teams because, to be honest with you, that was the first thing I saw. It was available to us through our institution, and I found it quite easy to use. But like we mentioned, maybe our number 2 session of the day with the students experience is that even though I might have found it easy to set up and I thought that they could get online pretty quickly, I did have some struggles for people how to figure out how to get online. It was hard because usually in the past I would be right there with them in the classroom. I would show them on my computer how to get online. So it was kind of hard that way, trying to type things out and send pictures and videos and trying to get them online. But And again, I keep my sessions are always recorded, just in case anybody can't make it. I don't like to put the onus on that they have to attend, especially with the beginning of COVID. A lot of our students couldn't make it because some of my students I found out quickly had kids at home. We're now caring for older people at home, had dogs or whatever like myself, and kids like myself trying to learn online as an elementary school or high school. And so I tried to remember to record all the time. Unfortunately, I did make the error once in a while not recording a session, and of course it would be right near the end of the session. But then I would take it. I would take it in my own mistake. After I told the students after we were offline, I said I forgot to record it. But as soon as I get offline tonight, sometime before midnight, I'll record one by myself, kind of doing the same thing over again. Just obviously wouldn't have any of you guys talking in any questions. But a lot of these features, I'm going to be using Bongo come the fall, and actually next week to be exact, because as a team we've decided we're doing our apprenticeship. I was doing our post-secondary, just finishing our post-secondary. We kind of all went in different directions. So this time I tried to talk to my colleagues and try to get a consensus. So those of us doing our apprenticeship came to a consensus to use our Bongo, which is our through. It's on our D2L anyways, to make it easier for the students to find and to keep it consistent. But on any of these features, especially the teams, maybe not so much the Bongos, I'm not too sure, but I'm still learning the Bongo, so I'm not 100% prepared yet. But as we were mentioning about back channels, I know my students were using Teams as a back channel once they figured out how I was using it and how they could use it for themselves. But I always let them know that these tools are there, and because we're using it for our class doesn't mean you guys can't use it for a back channel. So by all means, set up study groups, set up groups. I fully encourage that, right? So going online, the live sections I thought were kind of important too, because it helped me connect with my students so they could actually see my face. I didn't get to see all their faces, which was fine. That probably helped with the streaming and stuff as well. But it brought that human element so that we weren't in the classroom, but they could still see my face, see what was going on. It wasn't always pretty. Sometimes it was in the basement. So you saw the unfinished basement. Sometimes it was in my bedroom. Sometimes it was down on the kitchen table. Wherever the kids weren't, I had to find a place where I had to go. So they definitely they got fun with it. I started using the funky backgrounds for some of them and putting up pictures and stuff, and even stuff we were talking about. I put a picture in my background just to kind of change things up a bit. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's a good way for them to connect too, because they can all start talking to each other online a little bit there as we're going along. I found that very useful too, because as I was discussing stuff, they were having conversations in the chat about other classes or other concerns that they were trying to relate to each other. So even though they weren't paying attention to me, I wasn't overly offended by it. But and also the other thing that I liked with the live chats that I always did was kind of similar to Chad, but I would come online, especially when things were evolving, like changing from minute to minute as far as what's going on, what's coming on, what's going on with the school now with COVID-19. I spent that first little while reviewing everything I knew up to the minute. I said, okay, this is what I know now. I mean, when we're done our class today, it may have changed, but this is what I know now, just to kind of set your mind at ease. I want to tell you what's going on. This is what's going on. We are going to be doing the practical stuff. I don't know when yet, but we're working on it. And just to kind of ease them. And the other thing I would do too is share a story about what's going on with me here, right? So to let them know that, I'm struggling too. I'm online, but I can hear my boys fighting in the background. So that just kind of give that human element. So I think that was having a live discussion kind of helps with that, whatever tool you use. So, I mean, there's a picture of my MLS, not that important, but we'll move on. So my team, should I say, whatever, not important, we'll move along. I don't want to talk too much, but I tried to, on my D2L, so my MLS system, I have it set up so that my content online is broken into weeks. And every week has 3 pages. So it has an overview, what's coming up that week. There's a practice page, content practice page, I guess I call it. And then a summary page. So it's kind of breaking it down so they could follow step by step. I just go to page 1, go to page 2, page 3, and then that's that week's done. And then throughout that, it would give you hyperlinks to whether it be stuff I wanted you to read online, as well as hyperlinks like I'm putting on the screen right now to activities I wanted them to do. They were embedded. So this is what I tried to do to help to really engage them and kind of keep it the same as way it was before. We had done a lot of Kahoots before we had live in person. but I didn't know if I wanted to include them in the class because I was keeping it short anyway. So I wanted to have a resource once I figured out that I could assign it to them through Kahoot, and then all they had to do was hit the hyperlink that said I don't know drain plans. We're talking about drain plans. They would hit drain plans. That would take them right to the Kahoot and log them in, and it would be like a Kahoot like they normally would do, just not in the classroom. And but these activities I would embed they were good because they could embed them, but also because they were all interactive, and then they could redo them and redo them and redo them and read them over as many times as they wanted to. And I thought that was very important. And I think for the most part, talking to the students and me even trying them out myself, I think they were fairly student friendly. They're right there embedded in the content on the D2L for them. And as Chad mentioned before, a lot of these things are not that hard to do. Even the H5P, I was quite impressed with all of, like Chad had mentioned, all the different functions you can do on it, different things you can create. And trust me, I'm one of those stereotypical husbands, men who don't read instructions. So I went online. They had tutorials on how to do things. I read the first couple of lines and I thought, let's just start pushing buttons and feeding stuff in. Type a title in. Do all these things and start adding stuff in. And and sometimes I had to go back and go to the tutorial and read the instructions a little fuller. But I realized once I got one down or two down, they're quite easy. It's just a matter of taking the time to type stuff in, add video in, and stuff like that. And for me, it was a great resource for formative assessments. It was more so for the students and their aspect because it was embedded. So I couldn't actually. So the Kahoot I could see because I'm able to see how they perform. But any of the other embedded assignments, I couldn't see that they actually did it. I couldn't see if they did well on it, but I did have some people come back to me if they had questions, if they got it wrong and they didn't understand why they got it wrong. So I assumed that it was working, that people were coming back for feedback. And again, they're quite easy to build. I kind of have two on the screen here. The one on the top left-hand corner is more of a fill in the blank, kind of drag it over into the blank. Very basic, maybe very boring, but still I think it was fairly effective. It kind of got them to interact with the content again, because I know some students, like you said, are not the best readers or skim through stuff. So when they went to do the activity, they would realize, oh, I didn't quite get it. But then they would actually have to read the stuff to slide over into the right box. And then by them reading it, they were kind of, in a way, I was kind of forcing them to learn it. So I think some cases. So the other thing I was doing was, I can't really see it too there, but the bottom corner, this was like a stack elevation. So I'd had like hot spots on it. Or if I just asked them a simple question, on this drawing here, where would all the cleanouts be located by code that we've learned so far? And they would have to hover over the spots, click on it. It would either say no or would say, yes, you're correct. And then maybe even pull up the code reference to let them know that, just to remind them what the code reference was for it and why it was located there. I don't have it in the slide here, but I just, a while back, I did a couple of videos, my own videos, and I implanted them in so that what Chad was talking about, I have a couple of videos where it stops every couple of minutes, maybe every minute, 30 seconds, and asks us a little question. It pops up a little question. And again, it's not that hard to do. We don't have to, I think I'm a techie. I'm not a techie, but all the people do all the coding for us. We don't have to worry about that. You just got to drop the information in. Other things that I thought were key, and getting feedback from some of my students from the earlier session, it really enforces it, that I was making lots of short videos. I tried to keep them under 10 minutes. That was the key. Really, if I could get them under 5 minutes, the better. I think that was better to keep their attention span. And again, I would just embed them in so that they don't get sidetracked and go off to some other YouTube video that's more exciting about dogs or people falling over or something like that. So, because I know we all have the tendency to do that. So, I got to learn about, and many years ago, I set my own YouTube channel, but I never had any videos. So now I have I don't know, maybe I have 20 or 30 videos now. I don't know how many videos I have on there now, but not very many. But again, like you guys were mentioning, there's a kind of slow progress. Build one, record it. If I like it, upload it, and now it's there. I can use it anytime I want. I can embed it anytime I want in the future years coming up. But I use a lot of stuff like Screencast-O-Matic, so if I wanted to record my screen, And then I use iMovies a couple of times too, depending on the video, what I was trying to accomplish and how I had to do it. I would use different methods for different things. So sometimes I just recorded myself on my cell phone, upload to YouTube. Sometimes I did a couple of little videos and I add them together, maybe on the iMovie on my iPhone, just to give it kind of funky. A couple of times I threw in some of those sound effects, like the big fog horn. So just to kind of get the students' attention there to see if they were paying attention. And if I had this unique screencast, because sometimes I had stuff on my screen I just wanted to record and then make, and again, I could edit it in. But yeah, I think it's good for demos. So I did like demos for my how to draw drawings for plumbing. I've done it before for showing stuff in the lab as well. I didn't have to use it this time because I wasn't teaching it right now. But again, they're good to, you can embed a lot of these things into your learning management systems. The students can go back to retrieve it. The other thing I did was start doing video announcements. So every week on my MLS, I usually just type a little message in saying, okay, this is week number whatever, or the week has ended and week number 4 is coming up. Make sure before the week number 3 ends, you got to do a couple more things online if you haven't done so, and then let them know what's coming up. And then that was kind of it. But it was a type kind of boring version, and seeing how my language and my grammar, my spelling is not up to speed. I think I should have been using video a long time ago. And so, but I tried to make it, the key part I tried to do is make it personal. And I had one video where I had it's going to come up on the screen next. I don't know if I can show her or not, but I had my dog, and you can actually see one of my boys appear in the video. And that's because I was just ranting. I was doing one of those Rick Mercer's kind of rant back and forth outside my house, and then I ended up by my deck in the backyard. But again, and then I was just trying to make it personal, look at and make people understand that I'm at home, I got things going on, and so I think it's a good way to connect with your students, even when they're not online. I don't think it's going to advance there, but I don't think the video is going to work. I don't think I embedded it properly, but we'll pass on that for now. Not a big deal. Office hours. So I did set up office hours, and I'm always pretty much available. The old standard method, email, 24/7, like Chad says. I also have a problem setting boundaries sometimes, but whatever. If I can get that question answered and ease their mind, and it takes me two lines to type, then it's 2 lines to type, and it's done, right? So I'm also a person just like to have things building up on my desk or my computer or my laptop. So, but I use the teams. I set up the teams. I told my students, okay, we're going to have live sessions this day. On this other day, I have a designated for your class office hours from this time to this time. You can come on Teams and chat with me there. I'll get a notification right away to my phone, or we can prearrange it through an email or whatever. And so I did use it a few times, not as much as I thought. Though my office hours in the past I haven't used as much still, but usually it's been kind of unscheduled hours. So, but it's good because I could go online, use the same platform I was using for the class, share the screen, bring up the camera, which made it obviously a lot easier to explain a lot of different things. They're hard to explain in emails. And again, it gives me a chance to create connection with the students, let them know it's out there. Even if they don't use it, they know that there's that sense of care, hopefully, from me. And when they do use it and then it's successful, then it reinforces that they actually do care about what they're doing. So there's an example of a chat. And then the old boring system, I still use the old emails. It kind of goes hand in hand with the next slide that I didn't put in the right order, but I would keep an eye on my students online, see how they were progressing, and I would throw those emails out, especially at the beginning of the semester. I realized after a while some students had dropped out and just didn't actually officially drop out. But I would send a quick email to say, hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything I can help you with? And I've noticed you haven't been online for a while. And just figure out and just try and see them. And some responded back to me, and they said they really appreciate it. They said that they've been having a hard time with the online experience. They've got family issues, whatever. So it was good, and we can reconnect that way. And it helped a lot because some students reconnected and were able to overcome their concerns. So just a simple email like that, they're there to say, just check in on you, make sure you're okay, right? So the old-fashioned way. And the other thing that worked hand in hand was I used the progress on the D2L, or our DC Connect as we call it. I see how my students were progressing. Were they online? Were they logging in? Were they looking at were they clicking on the content? I don't know if they were actually, absorbing it all, but at least I knew they were online. And that's why I could ask that questions, email them, and see if they were, because they might be struggling, right? So, so if I saw they were online and they weren't doing successful on an assignment, then I could say, okay, I can see you're online, but you're not asking. I noticed that you're not asking me any questions. So, is there anything I can help you with? Or I could find out that they weren't online, and that's probably why they were struggling. So, and then try and see if I can help them. So, and the one thing I noticed it too during our time, and thankfully Durham College was really good at it, was early on we realized that some students wouldn't have laptops. So using the old email was a good way. I could converse with the students, simple. And I said, "You having problems?" They said, "Yeah, I have a problem. I only have a phone. I don't have a laptop." So I was able to connect them with the school and get loaners out to them. So kind of went well. So that's about it for me. There it is, progress.
Somebody asked in the chat here, Ed, what were the 3 pages you used? There's one was the overview, then there's 2 others.
One was called overview. One was called content practice, and the third one was called summary. I'm sorry, I was clicking some stuff on my screen so I can see you guys better. So yeah, they're when you go into content, you can either upload and drag stuff in, or you can create a file. And I think depending on the institution, and depending if even if you have D2L, you might not have all the art. My school has made up kind of stencil ones that are like with the school colors. You can go change the banners, the pictures on it, and so I've kind of started using. I started making my own until we created some for the school.
Cool.
So I'm just trying to keep it easy because I don't know if it's just my school, and I don't want to be ignorant here, but the whole they call it jump start model, where it's kind of the overview. I would always have a connection activity to get them into the content. It might be a short video, like say from this old house, talking about something we were about to talk about, or just a funny video, and then have the content with practice activities about what I've been teaching, and then have a summary to summarize up, and then somewhere like a next summary activity. It might be a Kahoot or something like that.
Awesome.
Well, we are 1 hour in, and I didn't say 15 words. That's amazing.
Well,
sorry, I couldn't see the clock. Sorry.
No, that's good. All good. All good. Yeah. So tons of stuff in there for people to go back and watch and pick apart. And one thing, I'll just finish with one thing that I've clued in on. That's not the right way to say it. Honed in on, targeted in on, was a course trailer. Telling my students what the course is about, what they can expect, what I would expect, asking them what they expect from me and from the course. And I recorded it in less than 15 minutes, and I did a tiny bit of editing. So the whole thing altogether it took me 35, 40 minutes to do. And good thing now is it's done. And I did it generically enough that I can roll it over into other courses and use it. I don't have to redo it. But using video, I think is going to be a real good touch point for our students. All right. Thank you for all of you who have stuck it out this long with us, and we appreciate it. This was a great day for us to sit down, and you can come back and look at sessions 1 and 2. Sessions 1 and 2 was about philosophers and practitioners. Session 2 was about the student experience with COVID and TVET, and this one is obviously about tools and tech for TVET. So I'm not sure if I can say this out loud, but I'm going to, and it's going to be live and recorded, but we'll probably be doing more of these in the future. And tell your friends and neighbors and all your colleagues and future apprentices, students, whatever. We'll be doing more of these. I think this has been good, and I think it'll provide a ton of value. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side.